Welcome everyone to today's webinar, the RCM trifecta, offset workforce challenges, improve staff satisfaction, and boost revenue. On behalf of Becker's Healthcare, welcome and thank you for joining us. Before we begin, I'm going to walk through a few housekeeping instructions. If you have any questions throughout today's webinar, you can type those into the Q&A box you see on your screen. You will find a few engagement tools on your dashboard. Please check out our resources section and also make sure you fill out our session survey. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. You can use the same link you used to log into today's webinar to access the recording. Lastly, if at any time you have trouble with the audio or video, please try refreshing your browser. You can also submit any technical questions into the Q&A box, and we are here to help. At this time, it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to our presenters to begin today's presentation.
Okay, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're located. I am excited to have this conversation about something we all are wrestling with in healthcare today, both from a staffing shortage perspective and innovative ways of being able to fill the gaps associated with those shortages. Today, I'm joined by a panel of healthcare experts that will help walk us through a deep and rich discussion, which I know will be valuable as you listen to this moving forward. First, I'll invite Pam Jordan, who is the Senior Director of Collections at Parallon and the Artiva Healthcare Product Business Owner, which is their collections platform they use to drive collections performance in their back office. Pam supports the revenue cycle process for over 200 hospitals, imaging centers, home health agencies located here in the U.S. as well as in the UK. With her is Amber Farnsworth. She's the Patient Financial Manager at Glendive Medical Center in eastern Montana, on the banks of the Yellowstone River, serving both Montana and North Dakota. Amber is on the front lines of staffing shortages plaguing healthcare today. If you think about it from the perspective of small market and limited human resources, often a difficult dance in terms of making sure that she can staff her organization appropriately to deal with the ever-growing administrative work that needs to be done to get paid in healthcare today. And then lastly, Andrew Wolfter is the CEO of Absolute Automations. He is a proven rev cycle executive with 20 plus years working on the provider side of the business, as well as on the payer side from a regulatory perspective. He's demonstrated great success and innovation through the development of tools using RPA to be able to enhance the performance of revenue cycle. So everybody, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining. Look forward to a spirited discussion. So we're not telling you anything new. It's been a struggle to fill seats in RCM, exacerbated by the pandemic, if you will. Over 50% of hospitals are managing crippling staffing shortages across the board, especially in administrative spaces that includes back office revenue cycle. And the elements of the pandemic have exacerbated this issue, especially within our organizations who had to adopt a work from home environment. Our staffs and teams have become accustomed to the flexibility of working from home and have bucked the office strategy of bringing everybody back into office. As we've struggled to maintain and attract talent within these operations. So now, with the drain of staffing shortages on our operations, we're faced with payers who have significantly ramped up the administrative work of denials using bots and systemically increasing the percentage of claims that they are bouncing back to these back office teams. So less people, more work from an administrative perspective, and more importantly, teams that are otherwise focused on a barrage of repetitive work instead of doing the good work of making human contact and connections with our patients to be able to navigate them through often confounding and complex rules around what is reimbursed and what is not. From a staffing perspective, recruiting and onboarding and training and compensation is extremely expensive and time consuming. People are far too vital in the overall equation, and we face not only shortages, but the high risk of burnout in the work that is unfulfilling in managing this barrage of administrative effort. We talk about some of the smartest people in the organization, and how we're leveraging automation to be able to protect them and keep them focused at the top of their license and the work that they're designed to do. But let's frame this shortage a bit, if you will, in the context of our experienced panel. Let me open it up to a few baseline questions to talk about staffing. Amber, I mentioned this in the front end of our discussion here. Small market, limited resources. How are you faring in Eastern Montana in terms of staffing your life cycle operations?
Sure. Yeah, and with the pandemic, we all went home. And like you said, people got very used to the ability to work from home. I've lost staff members once we came back into the office to that. I mean, they're doing the same job that they had before, but they have that luxury of working from home. So we've really had to become creative, and already in a critical access environment, we wear many, many hats. So we've had to become quite creative with our staffing shortages to, allow some to work from home. And the accountability piece was difficult in the beginning, but we were able to build on that and grow, good team meetings daily. We do check-ins, those types of things. But as far as our hiring pool in our local community, it's pretty tough, very tough, because people can work right out of their home.
Sure. Difficult work indeed. Pam, expand that to being able to manage that in 200 facilities. How many markets are you in, and how do you manage the difference between staffing issues within each of those markets?
Well, for the overall organization, at least from the back office perspective, all of our collectors were, all of us were sent home, working from home full time. And then you had to, not only was having to find ways to maintain the team spirit, morale, you had to build infrastructure to support getting equipment to them on a timely basis. What if their computer, they lost a monitor? What if the cell phone died? I mean, all of those different things, you had to build the infrastructure in order to support a work from home environment. It was proven to be a good model. And then when they started bringing staff back to the office, then you really got into the competition of other organizations, healthcare organizations, that were retaining or keeping the work from home model. So you get staff, you bring them in, you get them trained, you invest that time and effort to the point where they provide value, and then another organization comes along and gives them a better offer, and they're able to work from home. So you start all over again. And so it is a challenge to keep the resources. And then from the topic of this meeting, RPA, we've had to leverage that automation in order to fill the gaps.
Sure. Beyond the technology, I've heard a number of organizations using innovative ways to incent talent, to engage with talent, especially in the model where you're continuing to field a remote workforce. So, Amber, we'll start with you. Have you implemented any interesting ways of incenting your team to make sure that they're engaged and continue to work with you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we have team stand-ups every day with those that work remote. We have developed ways to integrate the people that are away from our office with the people that are in our office daily, like, have a little word search or something that people can work together on. But just bringing them together as a team, just a quick kind of icebreaker thing, and making sure that those that are not on site are very involved with those that are on site.
Sure. Sure. Just a few short years ago, we probably all wouldn't have imagined being on camera and in an environment like this to work, but it's become so commonplace. Now the work of trying to figure out how to drive engagement. Pam, what have you seen in your organization work well?
Well, it's very similar. We have the huddles in the morning. We have you come up with competitions and different things to keep the team engaged. You try to make sure that you reach out and don't leave anyone feeling like they're not part of the team. We've had to offer things like, more flexible hours, just different things to try to encourage them to stay with the organization and really don't want to leave anybody behind as far as feeling part of the team.
Sure. Sure. Let's get back to technology a bit. How have you leveraged technology and automation with your remote teams in terms of this environment, like a Zoom or a Teams call? Any tricks of the trade with regard to the platform that you've built out for supporting remote workforce?
We use web teams here, and we've created different groups within web teams that allow managers to, you have your director level that reaches out to everyone. You have your managers, and you may even build team groups that maybe revolve around a certain issue that people are seeing, so that you can stay up to date on certain things that are going on with the inventory, just to isolate that out into its own group and doesn't get buried in with all of the just normal thread of conversation. So really trying to leverage teams to keep everyone focused on different things and be able to reach your group of people that you need to talk to on a daily basis.
Sure. Amber, I'll ask you the same.
Yeah, we use Teams, but we do something similar to Pam. Each department will have kind of a little group that we chat amongst different projects that are going on. And that can be people that are on site, off site, depending on where they're at any given day. And that way everybody is still involved in what that project is. Everybody knows what's happening and can be on the forefront to maybe bring new ideas or challenges.
Sure. And one of the things that, we've all become used to the back-to-back from 8:30 in the morning until 5:30 at night, and the drain that has psychologically on you. One of the things that we've implemented here at FinBuy is the notion of creating meetings that end 5 minutes before the top or bottom of the hour, to make sure at least you have a little bit of room for decompression, a little bit of room to make sure you're preparing in advance of the conversation you're about to have. So hopefully you've seen similar impact from the things that you're doing with regard to managing remotely. Let's shift gears a little bit. Andrew, I want to talk a little bit about technology. You've probably forgotten more than we know about RPA and automation in the back office in terms of how to build the technology, some of the pitfalls, etc. For those who are joining this webinar who don't have a really good grasp of exactly how this technology can be leveraged, could you give us a little bit of a background?
Yeah, absolutely. So robotic process automation, or really using software to automate specific processes, is getting more popular. People are starting to talk about it more. So I imagine some of the participants, some of the people watching this webinar may already have an idea of what RPA is. It really didn't become popular, I feel like, in healthcare until we gave it an acronym. We seem to love all our acronyms in healthcare. So now that it's got a 3-letter acronym, we can pay some attention to it. But I've been leveraging automation and bots in healthcare, primarily revenue cycle, for over 20 years. So most people who are familiar with it know it as using software to really emulate a person, right? You currently have humans logging into systems, clicking on buttons, typing in fields, doing some task. And most people think of RPA as I will build a robot in the software that logs in for them, that does these things on their behalf, that interacts with software. But it is really important to think about the fact that RPA is different than people, that robotic process automation can interact more directly with your software. It can trigger application programming interfaces. It can process large data sets. So one thing that's critical to think about as you're listening to us talk about what we've done with RPA is to remember that when you're looking at deploying RPA for a solution, you want to take that as an opportunity to think outside the box of how you shaped a process to be done by humans, because you may be able to improve the efficiency of that, right? It's always good to relook at your process and make sure it's working and that you don't automate a bad process or pave the cow path. But it's also good to look at, could this process be done differently, more efficiently, because it's being done by software? Because we've seen the evolution of the scripting tools that were very basic, right? And all they could do was move the mouse and type the keyboard, to the very sophisticated solutions we have now that allow RPA bots to be much more robust, tie in artificial intelligence, and do much, much more complicated processes. It's a common misconception that RPA is only for very basic processes that you have to do, a high volume of. RPA certainly has gotten to the point where it can now do very, very complicated processes and do them very efficiently and very well. So it's important to rethink not just what you're doing, but could you do things differently with a robot? And we'll probably talk a little bit about that as the panel, I think, explores how we've leveraged RPA to deal with some of the problems that Kevin was talking about.
Right. So to kind of distill that down into, a couple use cases from an RCM perspective, task automation, right? Automating repetitive tasks that, often are the drain on morale of a talented back office operation, increasing efficiency, right? Big bots can work 24/7 very effectively, right? Reduction of errors, they can be highly accurate. Scalability, given your ability to do more with less individuals, less touches for of the amount of work that we're doing. Certainly from a cost savings perspective, audit trail, compliance, enhancing the patient experience, freeing up people to engage with live human interaction as opposed to dealing with a website or dealing with waiting on hold with a payer, etc. All important. One of the things I'll ask you to dig into a little bit more is the notion that RPA replaces people. It doesn't, right? But as we dig in here, let's make sure we focus on those pieces and those the benefits of RPA. Amber, let me go back to you from a live discussion about how you're using RPA in your organization today.
Sure. So with the all of the price transparency laws that have come forward, that is really good for our patients, but it makes our job a little bit more difficult. So in giving thought to that, trying to make sure that we meet the requirements for the good faith estimate, we just did not have the staff. We did not have the staff that was going to be able to meet that requirement. So we're leveraging RPA to do that for us. It will go in off of our scheduling system, identify the reason for visit, go out to our charge master, pick up the charge, and build that estimate and actually email it to the patient. That gives us live folks in the office much more time to spend with our patients that are coming in and have that FaceTime with them. That's one of the ways that we have implemented. We're also doing a charge capture that replaces sending out a spreadsheet daily to all departments in our facility to review their previous day's charges to ensure that they're there. This way, the bot can do that and say, hey, you're missing a surgery charge here. And then the final one that we're still in the works with is a claim change plus status bot that can go in and work our claims denials. And for those simple ones that, we know every time this is what it's going to be, let's get it taken care of. Giving, again, the office staff time to dig into those that really need that hand holding per se.
Understood. Pam, how about at Parallon? How are you leveraging RPA?
One of the first things that we did with the automation processes was to do claim statusing on the payer website and have the bot bring back the current claim status. And then we build a rule sheet or a mapping that said, based on the value that I'm returning back from the payer website, I want you to take this action. That action might be to push that account, accelerate that count in the follow-up so that you get it in the hands of a collector sooner rather than later if you know that there's an action that needs to be taken. It may be going out and querying Passport to check eligibility to see if there's another insurance for those that come back and say not eligible. It could be triggering an itemized bill if the status on the account says, or on the website says that they need an itemized bill. So there's different things like that that are pretty straightforward that we started with. And we continue to grow that not only in the back office, but across all of the areas of the organization, payment compliance, front office, coding, all different aspects.
Interesting. Andrew, any other use cases beyond those that Pam and Amber are working on today that some of your clients have leveraged?
Yeah, and I think there's a myriad of use cases for RPA, of course, but working in healthcare, we're a highly regulated industry, right? And then even from back end, you get into patient collections, you add another level of highly regulated tasks. And so there's a lot of functions that RPA bots can do, like Amber and Pam talked about. There's a lot of denial management work that bots can do that can accelerate and make things easier on your team. Then there's a lot of opportunity to look at those denials and say, are these avoidable? Can we move some bots up front? Can we move them forward to avoid some of these denials? Not all denials are avoidable, but there's certainly quite a few that you can work to avoid that denial entirely in the future. So that could be sending medical records for certain services we're going to deny for additional documentation. It could be fixing coordination of benefits errors up front when you can identify them through the eligibility response files that you get using a bot to scrub 100% of everything. It could be very far on the back end if your organization is doing anything with actual patient collections or like Parallon. If you're doing something that's highly regulated, there are things you have to do like managing an e-Oscar system for patients who dispute their debt because they don't know what it's for, or they don't remember this, or they just don't want to pay it yet and they want to delay. There are processes you have to manage according to the Fair Credit Reporting Act that you can automate with bots so that you get consistent compliance and those kind of things. But really the opportunity is to look at what are your people doing that's transactional work? What are your people doing that could be accelerated, you could provide your team with a tool to make them more efficient. You kind of think of it in terms of you're still going to need people, right? If you're running a construction company and your carpenters are out there and they're really good with their hammers and their nails, but you have the opportunity to buy them nail guns. As a construction company, that may be something you really want to do because there's some efficiency and value. You do that. So you want to look at where you can really improve the efficiency of your people and let them lean into their strengths and their humanity.
Interesting. Pam, we'll go back to you. How do what is the lift from a person managing RPA within your organization? Is it managed by your team? Is there a check and balances with regard to the work that RPA is doing versus the work that people have to check on to make sure it's accurately being executed?
Absolutely. We have a pretty sophisticated quality review process just to make sure that the things that we expect the process to address is being done correctly. It's pretty easy and a pretty clean process for a bot to look at a remit and know that a denial code 23 is going to be prime paid more, and to execute a payment transaction to write that off or to adjust it off. So, but still, you want to make sure, since that is financial related and not more just transactional, moving this to that, you have to have eyes on it to make sure that you are SOX compliant, that your approval process and you've got thresholds to adhere to as it involves reducing or adjusting a balance on a patient account. So that could be a pretty sensitive topic. So we have to have strong controls around that. And additionally, just the volume. We monitor volume to see if we are have a good run rate. Are our volumes peaking? Is it stressing? Is it causing any stress on the bot? Or we need to make adjustments? Is it timing of the day? Is it competing with other processes? All of those types of things require just some manual oversight in just the whole management of the process.
Interesting. Amber, same to you. How do you manage the technology?
Yeah, so we do something similar to Pam's organization. Our compliance and quality team are very much involved. We have a biweekly call. Most of the time it's in person, just to look to make sure things are flowing the way that they should be, and that we are well within our compliance ranges.
Sure. So what's next? If you think about your strategic plan over the next couple of years, expansion of RPA, Amber, we'll stay with you. What's next on the forefront of automation?
Yeah, we are very fortunate to have the leadership team that we have in our critical access hospital, who is very much in the thought of, if we don't move forward, we will be left behind. So a lot of the things that Pam has brought up as far as like eligibility, I would love to look at that. Late charge reviews, we would love to look at that. Just things that we could pull off of our staff to give them more opportunity, of course, to work with our patients face to face.
Interesting. And Pam, strategic plan for the next few years on RPA? Is there use cases?
Sure, we're expanding into other areas, such as our financial assistance area. It should be a simple process to go out and check the family size, household income, validate that, based on their out-of-pocket or total charges, whether or not they qualify with the federal poverty guidelines for charity. There are certain things that we can go through in an automated fashion and just push those right on through and eliminate manual touches. There are other processes where we require a physical review of documentation that they provide. So there's still a need for some human touches in that space, but there is a part of that inventory that can be automated just based on, if it's this and that, it equals this, then we're good, or we deny it. Other areas that we're looking at is expanding the actions on our remits when those electronic remittance advices come in, the 835, to be able to evaluate. And, some of that is based on payer, that, it's not always consistent. So you have to have the flexibility in the bot to have rule sheets based on payer as well, because payer behaviors are, even though the code is a code, how they interpret the code may be different and may lead to a different answer or a different action to be taken. So leveraging a rule sheet that says if this comes in, it's this payer and it's this plus that. It could be as simple as releasing looking at the remit, realizing you have only one insurance on the account. This is your patient responsibility, and dropping that to the patient so a bill can go out. I mean, versus someone having to touch that and release that insurance over, or that remaining balance off to the patient. So different things like that, looking at expanding into a correspondence workflow. When those images come into correspondence workflow, certain types of documents, we want to push them straight to a collector versus letting them sit in the imaging system until that account hits their working pool or their work queue 2 weeks later, only to find out, hey, I had this document 2 weeks ago and I could have addressed it at that time, just by giving me some type of a notification. And then one of the other things I'll just mention is Rev Code 510, the clinical charges that payers typically don't pay, just getting those adjusted off and getting the noise out of the inventory. What you're looking at is trying to get the noise out of the inventory, the things that are quick, low-hanging fruit, things you can just quickly, if, you know, just a simple rule, if this and that, do this. Yet we do expand that to more complex rule sheets as well, but the first thing that you'd want to look at are those things that are quick wins.
Sure. Pam brings up a concept, Andrew, that I know is something you focus on, is status to action, right? You know, that not just you know, to use the technology to get a status, but what do you do with it once you receive it, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a critical thing, because in my years as a revenue cycle leader, we've had claim status for a long time, right? And primarily that's brought us value because you don't want to waste someone's time working something that there's no value, right? So you get claim status, it's pending payment, you take it out of their work queue so you don't have somebody wasting their time with stuff. But there's so much more rich value there. And if you know there's an action you need to take and you get that back as a claim status, that's a beautiful use case for bots, because the bots could immediately respond. So you don't have that delay, right? You have bots that are working things the same day you know they need to be worked. And I also love, Pam, I love your thought and approach on charity, right? And the charity process, you know, I remember leading my revenue cycle teams and looking at my budget and thinking about how much I'm spending on my charity team, and you know, it could be a significant expense so that we could give away, you know, care, right? Because we wanted to classify things as charity and not let things fall into bad debt. But it's a complicated process, validating a patient's charity application, comparing it to their, you know, validating their income levels. We've had some clients who don't trust the estimated income levels that you can get from some of the tools that are based off of maybe their credit report. And there is the ability to put in the process the signing of an electronic IRS form, the 4506T, which essentially has the patient give you permission in the charity application to get the transcript of their income directly from the IRS. And we've had clients who really that was critical to them, that they needed accurate income level and reporting from the IRS, and we can actually build automation that'll get that kind of data and streamline, so your staff aren't spending so much time going through applications to essentially identify charity care. So I love your call out on that use case. I think that's a big opportunity that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about.
No, interesting. Earlier in our conversation, we talked about staff burnout. Have you seen, Amber, we'll start with you. Have you seen a positive impact on your teams through the use of RPA?
Yes. They are able to work the things that they know that are going to take some time. They can sit down and work on it, knowing that all of this other stuff that's kind of floating around that just needs to be handled is getting handled. And they don't feel as rushed or as stressed to get those things taken care of, and sometimes maybe not correctly when they're rushed or stressed.
Yeah. Pam, and how about yourself and your team?
I would agree with that. And when you take all of the noise let's say you have 100 accounts and 80 of them are these same old, do this, do that. I've got this denial code, so I'm going to do this. And you remove all of that allows them to get to those other accounts that require a little more intentional review, maybe some different actions to be taken, but provide much more value as far as cash in the door. So getting those other things out of the way so you can really put your focus and your effort into collecting on those more complex claims. I think that's been a win.
Okay. All right, so the magic question I've been setting you all up to ask through the context of the past 35 minutes or so is, are you bending the curve on staffing shortages? Has it gotten you to the point where you're able to, with the limitations in your markets, able to staff appropriately through the implementation of RPA? Amber, I'll start with you.
We're getting there. Yeah, it's definitely had a positive impact. We are getting there.
And
I would agree.
yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. We're making progress. We're just trying to retain the talent that we have, and then as the opportunities arise, just you have to look at job fairs, other avenues to find these people. We offer manager and training programs to try to bring in good management talent and train them up, so that as our managers find other positions, hopefully within the organization, and we have those people ready to move into positions. So we try to show that there is a growth path for the talent that we bring into the organization, and try to stop the revolving door, but to show that once we get you in, we train you, we give you the things that you need to perform your work to the best of your ability, and show that there is an upward movement in the organization for those that are our stars, and then really show that they have the talent to do the job and the heart. Yeah, it takes heart.
Mm-hmm.
So look, arguably, your organizations are cutting edge with regard to using, these modern technologies, modern platforms. Andrew, I imagine all the conversations you have out there in market, you come across organizations that have yet to leverage this technology in a meaningful way. What are some of the objections? What are some of the obstacles to bring other hospital-based provider organizations to the table?
Yeah, because I've been talking to, within our industry for years about RPA. My career has been in healthcare and revenue cycle, and really only in the last less than 10 years have I been evangelizing this technology. But there are fears still attached to it, right? There's concerns about, is there a compliance risk? If I put bots to do a process, am I gonna have HIPAA issues? And then what we found is bots are actually way more HIPAA compliant because they have no curiosity. They don't make simple mistakes like accidentally faxing, part of a patient's record to, with another patient's record items. So we find that sometimes the concerns about things like compliance actually improve with the use of automation that is consistent and follows the same steps all the time. But there's still the concern about, are robots going to take all the jobs, right? That's a fear people still have. And this is certainly fueled by movies and sort of scary articles. The reality is robots are not intended to and will not take roles away from people. What's really the focus is that, and Pam, I think you called this out perfectly when you're talking about creating a workforce where you have people who recognize the opportunity, that you reduce that revolving door, you reduce that turnover by letting people do good work. There's a lot of talk about burnout in the industry and almost all industries right now. And I don't think that burnout is the result of people feeling like they have too much work as much as it is people feeling like they have unfulfilling work.
Right.
They have too much of their work is unfulfilling, and they don't feel like they're providing value. They're contributing. And the hope for us is that bots are really relieving some of the pressure on this complex transactional data flow work that we do in healthcare, so that people can be passionate about what they get to do, that they can do more of the work that they find fulfilling. And I think as we come into an era where we're going to be balancing how to manage humans and bots and AI at the same time, it'll be important for us to, one, recognize what are our people's strengths, and two, how do I give them more that's fulfilling in their strengths, and not mire them down with a bunch of sort of repetitive work that we could build technology to take care of for us.
Wonderful. That feels like the right place to land here. I'll leave it open, for any final comments, but really appreciate you guys joining us here on the panel. Really appreciate the conversation and the dialogue, and thank you everybody who joins the webinar, and hope you find some value here.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
That is all the time we have for today. I want to thank Andrew, Pam, Amber, and Kevin for an excellent discussion today, and also to FinVi for sponsoring today's webinar. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you at future Becker's webinars.